So the supply chain of old, in my opinion, is dead. If you look at it, the whole reactive way has to change. So while we've made some strides in visibility and we have better tools for forecasting and all of that, I'm very excited at what the next few years will bring.
Hey, KP, what's going on?
Hey, welcome, Kevin. Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of Kev Talks. We've got a really good episode. A lot going on, Higgins, in December. You know, December is always, it can either be really, really calm and chill from typically most of the peak season volume. If it's not in the stores, it's not going to be there.
Yes,
But there's a
it's
lot of
not.
stuff going on in the industry that I'd love to I'll rattle off, rapid fire a bunch of topics, and whichever one you want to just kind of give me your take on. The Suez Canal, I think everybody sees that, hey, look, there's a strong likelihood sometime in 2026 and probably the early part that thing's opening back up. And that's not a good sign for the carriers because of overcapacity at this point in time. You've got the Supreme Court ruling and IEPA that probably is coming maybe next week, probably before the end of the year, which could have pretty significant implications, meaning if it is rolled back, the thought is that there's going to be somewhat of a window of time for maybe run up again, front loading, however you want to call it, but an influx of volume during that period. But and then Zim, I'd love to get your take on Zim's been out there for a long time. It's one of the smaller carriers, but a lot of speculation, a lot of churn. If it's not Lane Kiffin people are talking about, the people are talking about Zim. That's the next topic. And I've seen even polls on LinkedIn. Who do you think is going to buy Zim? Is it Hapag? And does that start some more consolidation on ocean carriers? I know that's a lot. There's a lot of stuff.
It is. Yeah, there is a lot. And then, along with what you're talking about with IEPA, we have the, Costco just filed suit against the Trump administration on the tariffs, right? So that's, who knows what's going to happen there. And that's significant if other people join in on that. But, on Zim, it's, I love these. I love Zim. I love those carriers like that stay in their lane and they don't blow up. And I wish we had more of them. But who's going to jump in there? Man, it could be anybody. I wouldn't be. I mean, if you go back to when we first,
yeah, are you going to buy Zim, Higgins? Let's start that rumor.
Yeah, let's start. Yeah, Higgins is in the run to buy Zim. I remember.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, cereal at this case, but I remember back when APL was on the market back in the day, and out of nowhere, NOL buys APL. NOL was a Zim size carrier, right? And then they buy APL. And so I don't know, man. I don't have any speculation on who it might be. The big boys are the ones that you always think of. Like you said, is it Hapag? Is it Maersk? Is it MSC? Is it ONE? I don't know all the regulations since they're an Israeli carrier, what it has to be. So I don't know. But, man, that's one to keep your eye on.
It is. Again, it's a hot topic that people seem to be not concerned with, but there are implications when that happens.
Yeah.
And then how do you as a BCO, how do you prepare for that? You think about, and this isn't the same situation, but a Hanjin bankruptcy.
Yeah.
The exposure that a BCO has that, but maybe make a different reference of past mergers. How does a BCO handle that and be thinking about that? So it's a hot topic.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be interesting to watch nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, listen, I wanted to a little bit of a shout out. So past guest, episode 21, Dr. Noel Hasagaba. Just recent announcement, effective, I believe, January 1st, in a few weeks, the new CEO of the Port of Long Beach.
Yeah.
So
Congratulations, Dr.
congratulations
Hasagawa.
to Dr. Hasagaba. He's been at the port for decades, and definitely well respected, and definitely earned this. So excited to see him in that role and at the Port of Long Beach.
We'll have to break out his band now. There's a celebratory concert coming up.
Yes, exactly.
We got to get Dr. Hasagawa back.
Well, listen, this episode is sponsored by the Port of New Orleans.
Yep.
And I want to kind of get your take on a couple of things. That's all things New Orleans. First of all, have you ever been to New Orleans, Higgins?
I've been down there once, only one time. And
have you been to Mardi Gras?
I've not been to Mardi Gras.
Okay.
After Shay graduated college, she went to Florida, and for 6 months. And as we were driving home, we detoured through New Orleans, and we stumbled onto Bourbon Street. And there, when you're walking through there with your daughter, you see some wide eyes, because she's like, "Oh, what do we just stumble into?" But yeah, summertime on Bourbon Street was crazy.
Well, a little trivia for our listeners. My wife and I actually honeymooned in New Orleans. We got married on 2/22/92, and we were both 22 years old. So think about February 22nd, we got married. Yeah. So we were there for Mardi Gras, essentially. Yeah. Didn't plan it, but we experienced. I think we were there for Fat Tuesday. But saw a lot of Mardi Gras parades. 22 years old, South Arkansas kid. Leave it at that. Was really interesting. Newly married.
Yeah.
I love music. The home of jazz. Louis Armstrong. All of that. Did the whole Cafe Du Monde. With the beignets and all that. I've always been a big Saints fan, so New Orleans is, a special place for me. So I've always enjoyed, been there a handful of times. We went back just a few years ago, and have been a few other times just passing through, but love.
That's awesome.
City. Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get down there and spend some time with one of our sponsors and hang out.
We should definitely do that.
We'll get on down there. So, but yeah, it's we appreciate them, and we'll have a little bit more about them in this episode.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with this is a friend of the ports. Again, sponsored by the Port of New Orleans.
Let's get to it.
All right. Welcome, everybody, back to another great episode of Kev Talks. We've got a special guest here, Milind. Milind, I want to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about, we've done your intro. They've heard just about everything that you've done in your entire career and then some. But give them just a little bit of assessment of kind of who you are, where you're at, and maybe your relationship with the Port of New Orleans.
Yeah, guys, 20 years, I can't believe it, in this, wonderfully complex industry. A large spell in pulp and paper, very formative for my career. Today, I'm in oil and gas with ExxonMobil. And, the story is that, most people never believe me, but I was born into this industry. I think I was on a ship when I was 6 months old.
Holy cow.
My dad was a chief engineer for many, many years. And I was exposed very early to the side of the industry that most people never see. So I spent a lot of my formative years playing on ships, ports, things that you would never do today. My parents probably had a lot of confidence in my abilities, oddly so. But I really gravitated to what I loved, based on where I grew up as well. So that was my formative part in the industry. I was very blessed to get into, especially when I started at Georgia Pacific, had a lot of interaction with manufacturing, sales, technology, and really had a lot of external relationships that were very rewarding in my career. So yeah, in a short bit there about me, But it's really been a lifelong pursuit in logistics. The 20 years was just the professional side of it.
Wow.
So pulp and paper to oil and gas.
That's
Your
right.
dad was a chief engineer. Was he chief engineer on like a bulk ship, auto ship, container ship?
All of the above, actually. So I
Oh,
got to see a
nice.
lot of ships. The only thing, oddly enough, and kind of weird because I'm in oil and gas today, but never on a tanker.
Oh,
So the oil industry for me is interesting today. But I got to touch and play with ships from a very young age, and that was really awesome, especially in the '80s when regulations and you it was a lot more fun. ISPS today at ports where you can't go in and out that
yeah.
didn't exist in the '80s. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Parkerson joined Walmart in 02. And so you probably never got to, you might have gotten on a ship, but back before, pre September 11th, that was, I love that. Every time I went to a port, I'm like, I got to
Yeah,
get on a ship, got to get on a ship.
that's right. That's right.
Well, I think that's unique of our guests. I don't think we have had anyone that has kind of that pedigree. Literally, it
No.
is in your blood. So
A
that's
100%.
yeah, that's really interesting. So
Yeah.
when you look back on what drew you to this field, what keeps you inspired? So I always ask people, look, you've been in it, you've
Mhm.
been in it long. What has kept you? Why are you stayed?
Hmm.
What's inspiring you today? There's the rapid
Y-
fire 3 questions.
Yeah, absolutely. People ask me, why should I join supply chain, right? When people ask me for advice.
Mhm.
And I apply that to myself, right? Every day is different and some days are really hard. But you're always challenged. And for me, walking into a situation every day, not knowing what geopolitical issues, what other, issues what we might be hit by, we have, asset issues, port congestion, all of that together. You never know what's going to happen. And for me, that's very, very inspirational. It excites me. And that's what I tell people. If you like that kind of environment and you want to be challenged and you want to be pushed every day, this is for you. If you want predictability, this is not a career for you.
Yeah.
There's a host of other, careers that we can explore for you, but not this.
So you've been having fun the last few years then. It's because all of that you just described, you
Yeah,
thrive in that. And I think a lot of us do. I'll be honest, a lot of that is what has kept me in the industry, in different ways. But I'm still in the industry, maybe podcasting about it and consulting, but I'm still in the industry. And all of what you just described, I thrive on that. I thrive on solving those
Yeah.
or working with teams to solve all of the things that the challenges that you just mentioned.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could add, if you want to touch every part of an organization and then some, supply chain is for you. It is the nucleus of everything. Sometimes we joke, we touch everything, we own nothing. But the reality is that you get exposure because so many tentacles of the organization are touching you as a supply chain. And when things get really hard, like, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, every part of the organization was looking to us and saying, what do we do? We're in trouble. And, from being the guys at the background, we were very popular for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and then of course, we sort of went back into the background, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We're back to B-listers now.
That's right. That's right.
so Milind, what are some pivotal career moments that
Mhm.
I think you've led a lot of different teams and different size of teams? What are
Yeah.
some pivotal career moments that have shaped your leadership style?
It's funny. 10 years into my career, I considered myself a really good doer, an SME, so to speak. You gave me a problem, the more complex it was, I dug in and I came out an expert and I really enjoyed that process. And I took pride in delivering these products and solving problems. But what I was missing at that stage at some point, when somebody tapped me on the shoulder, somebody I worked for at the time and said, you're really great at what you do. But maybe it's not what you were doing. But if you want to take that next step in your career, you've got to be able to work through other people. You've got to be able to inspire people. You've got to be
Yep.
able to put the right people in the right spots. And that was really an eye opener for me. It was very uncomfortable for a minute because suddenly I was not supposed to be the doer.
Yeah.
But that was very pivotal, and that for me was the transformation to opening my world to what leadership looked like. And then the experience was extremely rewarding. You start to see the people that, you know, sometimes we got them right from school, and they started to grow in the organization, and sometimes get promoted through the organization. And you started to see what you could do through other people. You know, all you had to do was give them the vision, the tools, you know, align organizational priorities, and then, you know, very personally, take care of their emotional and professional well-being. You do that, really smart people do wonderful things. And that was the biggest change in my career. So if you were to ask, it was less some of the positions I had, it was more the change of philosophy that I had, to be able to work through other people, and then, you know, inspire those teams, and work together side by side, and also be ready to do the things I was asking them to do. But to really see them thrive, that was rewarding for me.
Yeah,
So
I love that. I mean, KP and I both had those moments in our careers, and you know, I remember being told, you know, by one of my leaders, sent me out the door, and he's like, "Get it done," and I said, "Yes,
Yeah.
sir." And then he's like, "Listen, don't do it, get it done." And so what he was telling me was like, let your people get it, let your people do it. Stop, because I'm a really good doer. I'm a
Yeah.
great fixer. I'm a great doer.
Yeah.
So, but making that transition is significant mentally.
Yeah. That was one thing that stood out from one of your podcasts. So yeah, great story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, you know, we mentioned it a little bit in the intro about your background, but how has working across different industries influenced your approach to ultimately building out supply chain strategies?
Yeah. It's very fundamental level to be a, you know, supply chain practitioner. You've got to have a very flexible, open mindset, you know, right in your DNA.
Mhm.
But for me, working in pulp and paper, you know, a little bit of food and beverage, and then oil and gas, kind of really built a consultant kind of mindset in my, you know, in my mind. Because for me, being able to take some real foundational elements that I'd applied everywhere that worked, but really start to look at the needs of, you know, food and beverage is very different from pulp and paper. You're dealing with a
Mhm.
commodity on one end, and on the
Right.
other end, you're dealing with some really, really perishable, time-sensitive stuff that also much higher value.
Much different.
Are you able to take those needs and but a different set of intensity, and focus on them? For me, that was the change. But in reality, if I look at it, if you're a supply chain practitioner and you can be a good consultant and come in and look at a problem, and be agnostic to the product, and start to tweak things along the way, you're going to be successful. And that's what, you know, essentially my journey has been, and it's been very successful that way. But every day is challenging. When you know, today I'm being challenged in the biggest possible way, because oil and gas is very different from a lot of other industries. It's got some very specific ways of planning and deployment, and the geopolitical cycles are different. So you know, there's a different set of challenges today, but it's you know, it's kind of building my my toolkit.
You know, you mentioned consulting, and I feel like we should Higgins mark it right here and plug in a KP Global Logistics Consulting advertisement. That was really
Exactly.
good. I'm glad that you,
Yeah, it was
you
great.
said it that way. It wasn't meant that way, but I was just like, I kept wanting to interject and say, okay, add the advertisement right now. Slide it in. But
Yeah.
you know, let's talk a little bit about. I think you've got some experience in large scale procurement, and procurement
Mm.
really is, near and dear to my heart, in a lot of my career. And I'd love to get your perspective on balancing, as always, you know, in overall procurement, cost, service, strategic partnerships. This could be a full episode, but how do you
Mhm.
approach procurement as more than just a cost savings?
Yeah. You know, it's really safe to say that we're in the most highly unpredictable environment today, and that applies to procurement. Procurement functions today, if I look at what I'm dealing with today to what I deal with, you know, 15 years ago, the unpredictable macro environment, face paired with an avalanche of, you know, digital transformation and disruption that you're being faced with today, has really changed the game. So, you know, what I urge people to look at in procurement is to look at these activities in two buckets. you have to have your transactional activities, and you have to have your strategic activities. And the way I look at that is, if you do that, you start to transform a very static process in the past where you went out, you put a bid, people came back, you might go with the lowest provider. You make it a more dynamic, value-added exercise, and it really starts to put your key suppliers in a very bright light, because there you can focus on everybody in the same manner, but you can really lean in with key suppliers who hopefully will lean in with you. I always say, and I've said this from day one, procurement can never be a zero-sum exercise where one side gains value, either monetarily or otherwise at the cost of the other. If you really want to build long-term cycles of mutual benefit with a partner, you have to approach it as a mutually winning proposition in a partnership. And I know the last thing I'll leave you with is that the best procurement negotiation cycles start way before the negotiation itself. You're setting the path, days, weeks, months before you actually sit down. Because by the time you sit down and say, KP or, Higgins, what are we going to do this year? You already have a really good idea. Number one, you want to be sitting across from this partner, but in reality, what's the outcome you both want together? And the fundamentals from a $1 million exercise to a $100 million exercise, they're very much the same. But that's the way you view procurement. And I really think it needs to transform itself from, unfortunately, where I see itself today in many ways very static, to this more dynamic process I was talking about.
I think we could just stop right there, and that whole piece was huge. It's like you just wrote like that. We've been preaching that for a long time, and we could not have said it better. And that's just beautiful, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I believe it. I believe it.
But I think what's really important is, you didn't just say it, you've done it. And to be honest with you, Higgins and I have as well. And we had some great teachers, some great mentors that, the beginning of my career, I did not understand, the value in that and that approach. But over time, and from some great leaders, teachers, mentors, what you just described, I'm hoping the audience, really understands and digest what you just said. It is simple. You hear a lot of people say it, and maybe not exercise it or live it, but I can tell you, it is a successful model. So with that, 100%. What role does trust and transparency play in long-term relationships with, let's say, carriers or 3PLs? Because that all rolls into all of what you just said.
Yeah, it is huge. If you don't approach your partners, the ones that you really want to work with a sense of trust and transparency to begin with, you are leaving a lot of value on the table. So in my view, and the way I've been a practitioner of this in the past, is you really have to create these long-term relationships, really contingent on basing those interactions with significant trust and to be transparent. I mean, that's a given. If you don't do that, unfortunately, more often than not, I see people don't, because I think they feel like they'll give up competitive advantage, or the negotiation there becomes, to their detriment. But I see it really otherwise. That's why choosing the right partners to begin with, and then looking at multiple cycles with those partners. You can't look at this as a 1 month cycle or a 6 month cycle. You really have to look at it and say, what are your priorities? What are theirs? Do they align? And if you can do that and lean in together and put your cards on the table, you will unlock significant mutual value. And as I say again, it does not mean you leave value on the table, but you're setting yourself up to unlock significant value down the road. And that's what I have seen, not with every partner, but when I've seen it work, it's been magical.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you
that we're talking about this, because
100%.
We're recording this. I'll just say we're recording this in the November-December timeframe, and when the audience is listening to this, it is optimal time for this type discussion, because a lot of teams are preparing. If you aren't, then you're behind. They're preparing for the ocean renewal contract cycle. And taking these approaches and these learnings that we're getting, and these the guidance that he's providing is so important. So I'm hoping the audience really takes advantage of. It's great timing. I didn't know we were going to get into this level of it, but as we are, I'm just thinking about the consulting and the clients that I have today and how I'm helping them, and it's preparing for ocean contract renewals. So this is very, very timely.
Well, Milind, let me ask you this real quick. Follow-up question to what you just said is some organizations look at procurement differently than what you've described. So
a lot of them do.
How have you been able to navigate that in various organizations where you're talking about the strength of a long-term strategic relationship, trust, and the value in that versus somebody who looks at procurement as just a bottom dollar kind of function?
It's a really great question. I'm not going to deny it's extremely hard, especially when you have leadership that has a particular mental model of procurement, which generally means I'm going to get the lowest cost at whatever cost. I look at it as you can be very competitive, but you really have to look at other value from the relationship that's not just cost. You have to be able to prove to your C-suite that you're getting not only a very competitive cost for the market and where the market is at that moment, but you're really putting the building blocks for some sustainable growth. And eventually, look, I'll be honest with you. We had a particular partner during COVID that we had spent years in this cycle with. One partner, not, one out of many. This partner leaned in. This partner for years came to the middle. And when COVID hit us, well, the market had to go and pay market rates for ocean shipping. We actually were at negotiated rates. And it was a eye-opening exercise, but the seeds had been planted for years by people who believed in that cycle. It's not common.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And I experienced the opposite. Unfortunately, I wish where I was at that time. I did not experience that, and that is so important and so good to hear. That you had that experience and that the result, the fruits of your labor, essentially.
Yeah. But KP, not to dig into that too much, but why did you experience the opposite?
Because that pre-work had not been done. Honestly, where I was at, that pre-work had not been done. Those relationships had not been established, and that philosophy was not paramount.
Yeah. And I'll leave you with this too. Not every customer, like every vendor, is a good partner, right? You have to be able to say, really like talking to you. We had a great, but it's not a good time for us to do business, or our philosophies don't align. You have to be able to do that.
100% agreed. Yeah. You think about 10 different carriers, and many times that's who I was dealing with, and you had to know who was open to that. Some are, some just don't have that philosophy. They just don't get it and don't want to, and forcing that or trying to force that will not end well. And I experienced that as well. So you've got to be, it's a long haul. It's a lot of work, and it's identifying, who can be those type partners, and not everybody can, nor should they.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's right.
So I want to keep along these lines a little bit, but I want to get to, I want to make sure we have time and we get to tell me where you're at, and tell me a little bit about your relationship with the Port of New Orleans. And then inside of that, we always, if you've watched many of our episodes, somehow we weave food into it. We want to know your go-to food spot.
Well, I can tell you, and I, not because I've had, so Port of New Orleans, just to go back, it's been a constant in my career from day one. Whether it was pulp and paper, it was poultry, which I think is their second biggest export, or chemicals, oil and gas. The Port of New Orleans has always been a constant. What I really like about the Port of New Orleans, and I'm saying this because it exists and it's factual, is that the port is in some ways like a Swiss Army knife. right? So you can look at the port and say, do I want to go break bulk? Do I want to be container? Do I want to be multimodal, which is very important?
Mhm.
Do I want to use the Mississippi, which is an extremely big asset to them? So that port for me is an extremely flexible and I would say multifaceted organization. Can you move almost any product to there? Yes. There are some structural constraints today that, hopefully if their imports increase will, diminish. But ultimately, I look at them as an extremely flexible port. That's also very customer centric. If you look at the team there today, super customer centric. They know their industry better than anybody. They're able to connect you with the network. So, very happy with what I see there.
That's awesome. So do you live in New Orleans, or are you in Houston, or?
I do. I go back and forth between Houston, but my home's in Atlanta. So
Oh, okay.
Houston in the week and Atlanta on the weekends.
Okay. I have a cousin who works for, I think he's an engineer. He works for ExxonMobil down in Houston. So
Okay.
I'm sure it's like when I worked at Walmart, people will be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I got a cousin that works at Walmart." I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
which one of the 2.1 million people are they?" I'll see
There's
if I can't track them down.
There's 60,000 of us. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So where's when you're in New Orleans, where's your go-to place to eat?
Oh,
Let's get to
gosh.
the
I
food.
mein, this is very controversial because I have a lot of friends there that are very partial to those restaurants. I think Galatoire's is great. I think in New Orleans has a real multitude of restaurants. I mean, I'm a huge, Mediterranean/Middle Eastern food fan. So there's, Shaya and a couple of other Israeli restaurants there as well. But, I think Galatoire's is probably, top notch.
Well, we're adding those to our list. Higgins, we have a long list.
Dude.
We've talked to a lot of people in the New Orleans, Houston area, and we're making our list. And that may even be an episode. Maybe we do a tour of all of the restaurants, Higgins, and
Oh yeah.
we've got a
Yeah.
lot of really good ones.
I'm in.
Yeah, you should.
What? Yeah. I just want all the pastries from wherever. It's fine with me.
Oh, we have to go get the beignets. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I know that you've led, large teams, and I want to get our audience, get your take on a little bit of what do you look for when you're building a high performance supply chain team? Kind of give us your what
Yeah.
are those attributes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you look at it, I view building a good high performing team of any kind. It doesn't have to be supply chain. It's very simple. On a fundamental and basic level, trust, being open and honest, the communication, shared values, very important, shared values and priorities, and the ability to really take the wins and especially the losses together. It's fundamental. You build those things together, and then you add on a team that can pivot to growing and emerging crises, and creatively problem solve and feed off each other.
Yeah.
When options are diminishing, which is in our world often the case, and to really keep the customer focused, you need to remember why you're doing what you're doing. Because I think most times I've looked at teams, they're really great, but sometimes they forget why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you connect the customer to everything you're doing and you add those elements I talked to you about, you're going to have a very special team. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to build the trust and the communication. But if you do that and you have the shared values, as I said, it's really amazing. So that would be my very simple recommendation for supply chain or not. You need to do that. But to be able to pivot, that is very important as a supply chain team. A team that is, very lateral in their thinking and,
Yeah.
and linear, so to speak, and can't pivot, is a team that will have some issues. So I always urge people who come in and say, can you look at your inbox today and pivot to, I don't know, the last email because it's the most important, and be okay with that and be able to put what you're doing down and pivot to something else and come back to this later. If you can do that, you're going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was not good at that earlier in my career. And I was just mentioning to Higgins about managing inboxes and being able to do that. And I think I got really, really good. But the reason I did is, and I mentioned a little bit earlier in the topic of procurement, I had a lot of
Mhm.
really good mentors, teachers, and leaders.
Yeah.
So talk to our listeners a little bit about how has mentorship shaped
Mhm.
both your career and maybe the teams that you've led?
Yeah. It's often, not said enough, but a mentor for someone, especially at a very young stage of their career, is pivotal. If you're lucky enough to get a mentor early on, you're already in a very special place,
Mhm.
especially someone in an organization that has the influence in the organization and has a view of the where the organization's going, and really can connect to you and kind of flatten that curve for you, because it's very hard as a young professional to come in and learn the ropes and become politically savvy
Yeah.
and all of that. So to have a mentor, really kind of gets you into a very special spot. But also for me personally, even today, I have people that I bounce ideas off all the time because I respect them. I know that my mental models sometimes can be, they're my ideas, and sometimes I have blinders on. But also for me to calibrate myself and open myself to new ideas, because sometimes, you feel you have an idea, you feel like this is the only path, and someone comes along and says, well, have you tried that?
Yeah.
Even today for me is very valuable, and I do that with certain people in the industry. But I would encourage anybody who's in there in supply chain or not, get a mentor early, and really embrace that. And then when you're in your career, become a mentor to someone. You're
Yes.
going to change
Thank
someone's
you.
life.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was going to add that as well. Be the mentor,
Yeah.
look for mentors and be a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, one of the things that you said too is, at least from my experience, is I learn, I learn this way. And so I learned
Mhm.
a lot of lessons from people in the organization, no matter what their position is. And so,
Mhm.
typically we always think of a mentor, as above us or has that type of experience and they've been there, done that. But, I think we've got to make sure that we're applying our listening skills to everyone up and down and across the organization.
I agree. Some of the best ideas actually come from the bottom up. I
Yeah.
can't tell you the amount of times I've been on a factory floor or at a shipping dock, and somebody's been driving a forklift every day. Will say, you know what? I'm always encountering this problem. I have a better way, and some amazing ideas have come right from the bottom up. So always
Yeah.
be open, regardless of status or title or whatever.
100%.
Well, this is the future section of the episode where we're going to, get the crystal ball out. And, you've been in the industry decades. What shifts do you think will transform supply chains over the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah. To go back to the supply chains of old, because I look at supply chain today and I look at COVID as kind of the watershed moment for us. If you look at the supply chains of old, very good at dealing with and very efficient at dealing with predictable patterns of supply and demand, right? So, the last 5 years, in my opinion, have really shown us that the present normal with increased disruptions, risks that traditional supply chains just cannot deal with. And add to that the need. People are so conditioned now for speed. You put in that Amazon order and you're tracking it, and sometimes it's there on the same day. And the visibility that you have, right down to the truck that's moving with your package. All these things are new, and they put a lot of pressure on supply chain. So the supply chain of old, in my opinion, is dead.
As a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by the Port of New Orleans, a modern gateway for global trade with direct access to river, rail, and road.
The Port of New Orleans is the only U.S. seaport served by all 6 Class 1 railroads, giving shippers a real edge when it comes to inland reach and multimodal connections.
From moving containers and break bulk cargo to serving as a major cruise hub, the Port of New Orleans is helping shape the future of global logistics right from the heart of the Gulf.
And a big thanks to the Port of New Orleans for sponsoring this episode and for the critical role they play in keeping goods and people moving.
If you look at it, the whole reactive way has to change. So while we've made some strides in visibility and we have better tools for forecasting and all of that, I'm very excited at what the next few years will bring. And I'll tell you why. The risk of sounding cliche, everybody will say this, but the next generation of AI tools promise to fundamentally change my craft. If I look at it, I have to upscale my skills very quickly to be able to be ready to make more proactive decision making. So that's going to be, when we move from generative AI, which is today very solid, to more, agentic AI, it's going to take a lot of lower value activities away and let managers focus on higher value activities. It's going to help you automate workflows and really simple, repetitive tasks that are really sticky points with customers. I mean, some of the stickiest, hardest points that customers complain about all the time are low value tasks.
Yes.
Those today are easily, you can automate them. So that has to be done, and you have to start focusing on higher value tasks. And then if we actually transform to a more predictive and prescriptive supply chain, which I view as the future, I really view that as the next phase, and making sure that we're all ready for that is where I look at it. Ultimately, I'll leave you this, the supply chain of the future is going to be highly integrated. So today, there are a lot of silos, from planning to operations to execution to sales. It's very siloed. It's amazing sometimes that we can be efficient in this manner. Those silos will break down, and I see the seamless interconnectivity from end to end as the future. And ultimately, I think the resiliency that we talk about a lot is going to be ingrained into that. It'll never be perfect because the world is not perfect, but we shall see a more integrated, agile, flexible, and very resilient supply chain in the future.
Yep.
Man, I hope so, because we've been talking about that for 30 years.
Yeah.
We've had tidal waves of, acquiring, ocean carriers acquiring companies, and that didn't work. And, I look forward to that, just, that deeper collaboration. I did want to ask one question though, when you're talking about the supply chain of yesteryear, which I'm incredibly familiar with. Do you think that if you go back 20, 30 years, and the lack of tools we had back then that we have today, right? And the critical thinking and the decision-making skills and the way that people had to respond back then, do you think those skills have moved up and transferred into today, along with the additional technology tools that we have?
Absolutely. It takes the fundamentals of yesterday, because the fundamentals are still the same. You're pivoting all the time. You're being you're being asked to be very responsive. You have to deal sometimes with alternatives that are either bad or worse. Those things are there. But I think the tools you have now and the time you're getting back to make better decisions are really where the game has changed. So in the past, sometimes it took brute force it's grunt work to go and figure out a problem, right? You're calling people around the world, you're trying to narrow down by process of elimination, and you'll find the answer. That all now, for the first time, has the potential to go away. And if you're not using those tools, which most organizations today are at least in the infancy, or at least in some level of adoption, you're wasting a lot of time. So I view the fundamentals being the same, but you're now shifting your activities, as I said, from more, I would say, transactional activities, so a lot more strategic decision-making activities, and you're able to respond in real time to what's happening on the outside, which is acute today. I mean, I used to joke about black swan events. Well, every year is a black swan today, right?
Yeah.
So
we constantly live in one.
I'm encouraged.
Yeah. Good. I love that. Thank you.
All right, so here's the free portion of the episode. Everything leading up to this, we've been charging listeners $5 an hour or a minute, but here's the free part. So if you could give one piece of advice, again, this is free, to our listeners, to the next generation of supply chain leaders, what would it be?
Yeah, it's something that I have always looked at as for myself, but you have to be curious in supply chain. If you're not curious about anything and everything, you're missing a big piece of it. You have to be innately comfortable with being uncomfortable in supply chain. Every day is going to rock you. Every day is going to throw you. Your plan for that day, I guarantee you, will be out the window within 5 minutes, if not, sooner, before you get to the office. Get to the office, but when you're in the office, also immerse yourself in the outside supply chain. If you have the opportunity to work for a carrier, a manufacturer, a BCO, push your managers to get you on the factory floor, get to ports and terminals.
Yeah.
And then finally, I have to tell you, build those relationships. Your network is going to be your capital. Without that network, people think they have all these skills and all these abilities. Your network is everything. I can't tell you the amount of times in my career where people have said, you know what, Milind, I'll step in and help you, or a different part of the world, and I can't figure out something in the middle of the night. I've been on vacation and gone on a call and said, this ship, we can't discharge the ship. We have a labor issue. What do we do? Well, there's a partner on the other side that's willing to get up and help you at that time. Make sure that network grows. And then also just be a student of every part of the supply chain and become an expert in one part or at least a couple of parts. But be curious. It's very simple as that.
And that was a masterclass.
Yeah, it really was. And as simple as it is, it's so true. And I love how you said that.
Yeah, I was beautiful.
Yeah. So at this point in your career, what's the most rewarding part of your career thus far?
That's a great question. I think it's where I am, especially when it comes to technology today, because I would say for the last 15 years, the tools I had at my disposal were very much the same. I was working on relationships, I was working on fine-tuning some things, but today I'm being presented with a set of tools in my career that are really challenging me to say, how fast can I adopt them? What are shiny objects that I need to ignore? There's a lot of products out there, a lot of people coming to BCOs today and saying, I can solve all these problems. A lot of them are just rinse and repeat products, right? But there's some game changers there today. And for me, that's very exciting to see what the next step is, because I really feel like my career, there's a whole chapter for me. I feel like I'm a student in some ways. And I feel like that is where the next 15 years might go for me, right? Can I master that next stage? Because we're at a very pivotal part of the supply chain today. Some people are ahead, some people are behind. Can you master the next wave to deal with all this unpredictability and stress in the supply chain? That's the challenge that's where I am in my career. So as much as I've changed industries and I'm oil and gas today, I'm still very much looking to, what do my skills need to look like for tomorrow?
Wow.
Great
So outside
point.
of logistics and supply chain, what helps you stay grounded and inspired?
Yeah, well, this my family's going to roll their eyes here, but
As long as
as
they're
much as
listening,
I like to
as
get
long
up
as
the
they're
grade,
subscribed and listening.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I say this with all honesty, right? It could be a trip, a travel, or whatever. There's always a maritime museum or a ship spotting location or something that is woven into my travels. My kids
They're rolling
are
their eyes.
tired
Yep.
of saying, "Can we stop and look at that ship?" Or, "Dad, this museum's really boring, and why are we here?" And but I love that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I live the industry. I truly believe what the industry does is magical. The fact that you can buy products today that you couldn't buy 50, 70, 80 years ago and have them within a few hours. For me, that's magical. So I do that to relax. I also have taken of late to, cooking and baking. And I'll say baking because you have to be very, very precise. You can't, like my mom never has a recipe, right? She's always saying, oh, do a little bit of that, a little bit of that. But when you're baking, you have to be spot on. And the product, if it comes out well, is really well, it's done well, it's precise.
Yep.
I love that part. So, those are all very relaxing things to me.
Okay,
That's
so on our
awesome.
food tour, Higgins, we'll just add his house and we'll go by and he'll make us something.
I sounds like a wonderful meal.
Yeah. So Milind,
and great dessert.
we typically ask, our guest, this next question, but you've been in it. If you weren't in supply chain, what career might you have chosen? And I don't even know if you could do anything outside of supply chain. It's in your DNA. But what would it be?
Believe it or not, again, it's connected to the movement of goods and people, but I love aviation. So I would have probably been a pilot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A pilot.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I have a question about movies. If you,
I knew that was
and
coming.
I'm just going to jump in, Parkerson, but
Okay.
Milind, if you could pick a favorite movie that had some relation to, in any way, to supply chain, what would that movie be?
It's an easy one for me. It's not because of why it's connected to supply chain, because it's because of the level of detail in that movie. So a lot of times, if you watch a maritime movie, the ship looks wrong. It's from
It's
a
usually a
wrong period of
CMA ship.
time. Nobody knows what they're doing. But if you watch Captain Phillips,
Yep.
it is spot on. And if you talk to the people at Maersk today that have gone to other industries who are advisors of that movie, they have chosen right down to the vessel, right down to the stationery the captain was using. The whole movie itself was a masterclass in authenticity. So for me, that movie really resonates. And when people talk about the more adventurous sides of the supply chain, piracy, it's a great movie. So I love it.
Yeah. I love that movie too.
I don't think anybody's ever said that one, Higgins. Have they?
Nope. They've never picked Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
No, here I am doing the greatest beer run or smoking the bandit, and he's getting all deep on, look at the stationery on the bridge.
But that's an intense movie. That's a really good one. I haven't watched it.
I watch it every time. Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah. I couldn't find one detail off, so it was a great movie.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have one surprising or funny story from early in your career that kind of makes you smile or laugh? Higgins and I have a lot, and that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, my whole career.
So I'll tell you one. I mean, I'm not very proud of it, but I'll tell you. So first few years of my second year I was in the industry, the military was an account of ours, and every few months they would send us a gift. The gift was a pallet of MREs, meals ready to eat, right? And I was 24 and always looking for free food or whatever. And I would take these MREs, and little did I know that these meals are calorie dense, 2,000 calorie meals built to sustain soldiers in the field. So I would eat them all the time. And I can tell you, like a few months later, I had to go on a major weight loss regimen because I couldn't fit any clothes. And I would pick all the best parts of the MRE, and I'd take the M&Ms, and I'd eat the high calorie chicken and whatever, because we had a pallet of it every few months. And very bad decision, I can tell you.
I can only imagine just going to town on a bunch of MREs for a month.
It was free.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Free,
I do
right?
the same. I do the same thing.
Well, listen, this has been great as always. Getting to talk to people in the industry like this, it's always so refreshing to find people like yourself that are really aligned with, what Kevin Higgins and I have lived and done in our careers. And we just love that your philosophy to everything. But Milind, thanks for sharing.
That's so great.
Not just your expertise.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you guys do as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for your perspective on what it really takes to build supply chains. What stands out to me most, from just the last couple of minutes is that resilience isn't built in just like boardrooms and dashboards. Mm-hmm. It's built by people and by leaders who see disruptions that we've seen in the last few years as a chance to learn, by teams that stay curious, you mentioned that, and committed, and by partnerships, you mentioned that multiple times, that are built on trust instead of transactions. So really appreciate you sharing your perspective, and thanks for joining us on Kev Talks.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Milind.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. If today's discussion inspired you, don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and share our podcast.
Remember, every great journey in logistics starts with a single step forward. Let's continue working together to transform the industry.